I was about to say good afternoon, but I guess it's evening. Good evening. I want to remind people if they have any issues to call 630-CITY. If you have anything that's life-threatening, you should be calling 911. You're going to get an update on the specifics of the status of the storm here in a minute from Angie. Briefly, I can tell you we are in the peak of the storm now, and she'll talk more about as that peak dissipates and begins to leave. There is still, however, life-threatening storm surge on the coast, at the beach, and even parts of here in town, San Marco, Ortega, etc. You should not be out looking at the river, taking pictures, trying to see something exciting. It's dangerous. It's not worth it. You should still be in your homes. Have spoken to the governor numerous times today on numerous issues. Specifically, the governor has offered to, and working with Water Management District, Army Corps, to help us with flooding when we get on the other side of this. Search and Rescue, JFRD, is teed up actually to begin doing damage, flood, and search and rescue assessment now in certain parts of town. And obviously when we get access to the beaches, given the conditions out there, they'll be out there as well. As the flooding settles in, talked earlier about the storm curve. As the storm goes out as expected, that's going to continue to keep pressure on and pressure the water, flooding to remain. I believe, Angie, you said flooding could be an issue for up to a week. Within the St. John's could be up to a week in certain areas. I think that's it for me. With that now, Angie, if you put them up in there.
Good question.
Let's get through the, everyone please don't take questions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Angie Nietti, incident meteorologist from the National Weather Service, here to support operations for Hurricane Matthew. This evening, as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, Category 3 Hurricane Matthew was centered about 50 miles east of Ponte Vedra Beach. And our local winds here in Duval County were either at or have already met our expected thresholds for this event. Those winds range from sustained speeds of 50 to 65 miles an hour with hurricane force gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour. And those stronger speeds were generally confined to the intercoastal waterway eastward along the immediate coast. We are continuing underneath a hurricane warning at this time, as well as a storm surge warning, and that storm surge is to call attention to the fact that we still have inundation in areas of over 3 feet. In fact, this afternoon, the Mayport tide gauge had reached its second highest recorded level of 5.22 feet at high tide this afternoon when the surge was coming in. And this was only surpassed by that 100-year storm that we were alluding to yesterday. Back in 1898, we had a Category 4 storm that made landfall near Brunswick, Georgia, and we had the record tide of 8.5 feet. So today we set a new record high tide level there at Mayport of that 5.22. So along the immediate coast, we've seen our high surge value. As we have high tide continue to press down the river, we've seen it in most locations through downtown and even into Julington Creek late this afternoon. We'll continue to have that water push southward down the river through this evening. And as the mayor was alluding to, even though our conditions in terms of surge are gradually going to improve along the coast, it's not going to be a flip of a switch as soon as our winds shift. It's going to be a gradual recession of the water moving offshore as we get into tonight and even into tomorrow. But within the river basin itself, with the forecast track of Matthew, even though the storm's going to push off to our northeast and gradually weaken and kind of do a dipsy-doodle offshore, kind of a recurvature, the storm's going to weaken, but it's going to hang out offshore. And the currents and the wind that's going to be generated from the storm is going to continue to press the wave action in the Atlantic onshore, which is going to trap a lot of the river water within the St. John's Basin. And the St. John's acts as kind of like a bathtub, if you will, sloshing water back and forth. So those along the river basin, the St. John's, we are expecting you to have an extended period of at least a week with high tide cycles as that water sloshes back and forth. It's not going to be able to recede very quickly, given the storm's going to be lingering off. So in summary, we are still experiencing tropical storm conditions this evening across our area with life-threatening storm surge, flooding, and widespread damage due to both winds as well as flooding. And it is still not safe to go outside until instructed to do so by your local officials.
Thank you. And now we'll have Director Woodard talk about shelters.
Good evening. We continue to operate shelters in support of our citizens who felt the need to evacuate because of this event. We have about 2,300 people currently in the shelters. Obviously, it's not safe to be out traveling to a shelter tonight, but tomorrow, if people do find a need because of power outages or other safety reasons to seek shelter, please contact 630 City. If you need additional information, we'll also continue to publish those shelter locations. If you are coming to a shelter, we ask that you bring with you bedding, medications, water, food, anything you might need for several days to sustain yourself at the shelter facilities. Thank you.
All right, and Dr. Wells is going to talk to us about some safety issues.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Dr. Kelly Wells. I'm the Director of the Florida Department of Health in Duval County. The Florida Department of Health wants to remind everyone as we move into this next phase and prepare for the recovery phase of the storm, we've been advised about the risks of floodwaters. Floodwaters carry health risks as well, particularly if they become contaminated. So we want you to minimize your exposure. So if you are handling floodwaters unless you absolutely have to, and if you do, you need to wash your hands very often with soap and water, and you need to take special care to do that if you're going to be preparing food. In addition, floodwaters can seal things that can cause harm. So displaced wildlife, for instance, debris, down power lines. So we, again, advise you to avoid walking through murky floodwaters. Secondly, I want to caution residents against carbon monoxide exposures. This is a time when folks are using gas appliances, charcoal grills, gas grills, and they're using generators. Each of these carries a risk of carbon monoxide exposure. Carbon monoxide is odorless, it's tasteless, and it can accumulate very quickly if you're using these appliances in an area that's not well ventilated. It needs to be placed outdoors, and if you're using any one of these appliances and become nauseated, weak, dizzy, you must immediately seek fresh air without delay. That's very, very important. You need to get fresh air very quickly. Finally, if you are not sheltered, but you have lost electricity, and you have need of electricity because of a health problem, please do call us at 630 City. Make us aware so that as soon as we can get help to you or get you to help, we are able to accommodate your need. Working together, we've come this far. I want folks to remain very vigilant and to take precautions and to heed the warnings to remain indoors until the circumstances are safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And we obviously have significant power outages. And as we've been speaking leading up to this during the day today, we're not going to put, the JA is not going to put their workers in harm's way. I'll let Mr. Hobson here with the JA speak specifically to some of those issues.
Thank you, Mayor. Ted Hobson with JEA. We currently have about 162,000 customers out of power. That's slightly over a third of the JEA customers. All of our crews are currently in secure locations riding out the storm. They will come out and begin restoring power just as soon as they can do that safely. We know for sure that we'll be able to do it, and we certainly hope by the forecast by early tomorrow morning, 6 or 7 o'clock. By 6 o'clock, we will have over 800 people involved in the restoration effort, damage assessment effort, including JEA crews, contract crews, contract tree crews, and others. So we take this seriously. We will do the damage assessment and begin making estimates of the length of the outages. One last safety concern, there is lots of wire down out there. Sometimes you can't see it. It's wrapped around trees. You need to look for it carefully. Stay well away from it and call 630 City.